Why are y'all so quiet?
Wait, what?
Why are y'all so quiet?
I don't know.
Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yay, I made it. Okay, I'm going to put mine on mute now. I'm just listening to you guys today.
Sounds good, Stephanie.
That's better.
Hey, guys.
Hello, hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm freezing, but I'm good.
I know I can't understand why it's so cold. You'd think it was winter still.
I know. And it's colder now than it was when we woke up.
I know, it's only gonna get worse, sounds like.
Yep.
Get
I
the
wasn't
fans
really
in.
ready for that.
Yeah, really. Oh, bear with me a second. I gotta pull up something here.
Sure. Guys, I'm on a meeting. You need to take it down a notch, okay? Oh, I forgot to hit my mute button, didn't I? My apologies.
No problem.
Oh, the life of being a mom.
I'm sure much more interesting things have been said on virtual meetings.
And done. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Yes.
Well, we're gonna have a quorum. Get a little nervous.
Hope so. I know that we heard from Philip and he's not gonna be able to make it, but you know how we heard from anybody else?
No, I have not. Just Philip.
Is Philip not going to be here?
No.
It's kind of unusual for this many absentees.
Did they all freeze?
No, that's tonight. Freeze tonight.
1, 2. So we need 4, correct, to get a quorum?
That is correct.
So. So we've got, there's Brian. Who is SMCNIC? That's,
That's Stephanie,
oh, Stephanie McNichol. Hey, Steph.
Stephanie McNichol.
Hi, I'm just observing today.
Well, welcome. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Good to hear you. Anyway. And then BHE.
That's Brandy Heinrich. I always butcher her last name. I'm sorry, Brandy. But she's our development account specialist. She sits in usually in the front of the office as well. I think you met her, right, PJ?
All right.
Hi, I'm just
So-
observing today too.
1. So far we've only got 3. I need 1 more person.
I would frantically text them, but I don't have anybody's phone number.
You know, I don't either. I'm hoping Myrna does.
We got to remember that next year.
Yes, I'm looking to see right now through my emails to see if I missed anything. But the only person that replied with a not attending was Philip. Let's see.
There we go. Tracy's here.
Hey, we got a quorum. Way to go, Tracy. You made our quorum. You're on mute. You hear us, Tracy? You're on mute.
Yeah, I figured that one out.
All right, there you
And
go.
yeah, and then I tried to click in the picture of your face, and that little microphone obviously doesn't work. So sorry,
All
guys.
right. Well, good. I think we have a quorum finally. So it's myself, Tracy, Brian Robertson, and oh my gosh, who am I missing? Oh, Jen. Thank you. Sorry. All right. Well, let's bring the meeting to order. It is February 10th. It is what, 3:35. So we'll bring the meeting to order. And let's see. All right, it looks like we're gonna have a pretty quick agenda today, possibly. So anyway, let's start off with the regular session and discussion on how the UDC Advisory Committee Virtual Conference will be conducted. Andreina, I'll let you take that one.
Welcome everybody. Happy Wednesday on this cold February day. It's great to see you. But really, it looks like we don't have any members from the public, so it's just going to be business as usual. Just reminding everybody to mute your microphone so that we don't have any echo. And then if you do run into any technical issues, like your call falls, and you unexpectedly leave the meeting, please let us know. Ethan just put both his phone number and my phone number on the chat. But it's very important that if by any chance you do lose connection, let us know, because we have just the 4 to be able to make a quorum, and we need 4 to continue to be able to conduct the meeting. So just hopefully it's a quick meeting, and we won't run into any issues. So that's all I have.
Okay. And since we don't have anybody on the public here, we'll kind of skip regular session item B. And we can skip to item C on the legislative regular agenda, consideration possible action to approve the minutes of January 13th, 2021 regular meeting of the UDC Advisory Committee. Have you all looked at the minutes?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
In the paragraph that starts with Amy Payne on the comments, it says, River Development stated they are vest in older code. Is vest a new word that I don't know for, grandfathered, or is it a typo?
It sounds like it may be a typo. I know, it's.
Should be vested.
Mhm.
Okay. Since I was not at this meeting, I'm not going to have any comments, and I'm not going to make any motions either. So I will entertain any more discussion or a motion to approve.
I move to approve with the one change that Tracy just mentioned.
Okay,
I second that motion.
Tracy seconded. So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Okay, passed unanimous. All right, so that leads us to legislative regular agenda item D, a public hearing and possible action on a proposed text amendment to the UDC relating to the tree preservation and landscaping standards, specifically as it pertains to tree preservation, removal and mitigation, street yard, gateway and parking landscape standards, and screening and water conservation requirements. UDC General Amendment number 20-03. Andreina, you have the floor.
All right. Well, I'm going to handle this part.
Okay.
Andreina agreed to handle the other part for me. Like the agenda caption stated, the purpose of our meeting today is to consider providing a recommendation to the City Council on the UDC amendments that we've been working through over the past few months as a part of our annual review cycle. Y'all will, of course, remember that these amendments were meant to address conflicts, clarify things, and find opportunities to encourage water conservation through our landscaping ordinance. Of course, as you remember, broke it up into 3 different groups. We talked about our tree preservation ordinance, then we talked about our landscaping requirements related to street yards, gateways, and parking, and then we considered our screening requirements and water conservation related issues as our 3rd category. So we, of course, talked about all sorts of different things, from defining vague terms in our UDC to considering which trees should be excluded from our tree protection ordinance. We also discussed which trees on a site can be counted for credit or for the total removals of a site permitted on a site. We also talked about the differences between a tree survey and a tree inventory, which instances they may be appropriate. We even considered additional options and clarification to our mitigation ordinance, to the mitigation section of our ordinance. We've also talked through a lot of issues related to artificial turf, alternative street yard requirements, addressing utility conflicts and conflicts with signage for businesses. And we also eventually figured out that we did not need to make any amendments to our auto-related uses. Then, of course, we also have talked a little bit about waste containers and ways that we can encourage different types of landscaping and methods of landscaping to reduce water usage and encourage water conservation on our commercial properties. This is just a recap of where we've been up until now, of what we did that fall, excuse me, when we were drafting and considering new amendments. Where we are today is where we have planned to have made a recommendation to the city council on those amendments that we've considered. Over the past month, we have gone through our public notification process, public notification process to receive comments from the public. We've also gone to the Planning and Zoning Commission and made a presentation to them and received their feedback. And last night, we were able to talk to the city council about a few of our amendments, which we'll discuss early. Yeah. So last night at the yesterday afternoon at the city council workshop, we were able to start our discussion with the city council on the tree preservation part of our amendments. Due to time constraints, we did get cut short. And so our conversation regarding street yards, gateways, parking, and water conservation will have to wait 2 weeks until the next city council workshop for us to get their feedback on that part of the proposed amendments. But as we talked through the tree preservation section last night, the city council generally agreed with the amendments we were proposing. They did ask us to do two things. The first thing they asked us to do was consider reducing the size of credit trees. So currently anything between 6 and 14 inches can be used as a credit tree towards your mitigation requirements. So if you save a 8-inch tree on your project, that can be used towards replacing in quotes the trees that you removed. So they asked us to look at reducing that number, something less than 6, which is our current minimum. And last night, they also asked us to consider and provide some information on allowing the trees that we require to be planted on new single-family homes to be credited toward mitigation, which is something that we talked about here before as well. But in general, besides those two things, they're supportive of all of our proposed amendments related to the tree ordinance. We did have, like I said, over the past month, we opened our public comment window.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
On that, so the planting trees on single family homes in the neighborhood, that's been an issue. Obviously, our guests have talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So was there discussion on last night's meeting about this, and if so, what was the gist of it?
So there was some initial discussion about it. I mean, I think that, some of the city council members did express to see, some of the pros, if you will, that allowance would be able to have, such as particularly just being able to have more trees to be able to be planted within a particular area. But we also discussed about some of the issues and the hurdles that we have that we're going to have to address should this be, should this be allowed. The biggest one, as an example, is where, right now state law really limits us and to some extent actually prohibits us from imposing any sort of restriction that would not allow a homeowner to remove a tree. So right now, the way that state law reads is that if a home, depending on the tree species, the size and so forth, a homeowner can remove any tree on their property and we cannot tell them no. And so we need to be able to explore, what it's within our authority and capability of being able to enforce under the state law provisions. The other thing that they also brought up is that, in regards to the deed restrictions, which I know there was also something that we discussed about before, because those are something else that we cannot enforce. So it's more related to, okay, like we need to kind of like go back and see what can we actually do, what is within our jurisdiction and our power to be able to implement and enforce, if this is something that for us to be able to actually consider and include into our UDC.
So you bring up a good point. Your point about what the city can require someone or can't require somebody to remove a tree, or I guess basically have rule over that. I was looking through the changes that have been proposed in the highlights, and one of them I came across was the tree removal permit, which basically, you scratched out heritage tree removal permit and basically made it just all protected trees. So first of all, I got a couple comments on that. Number one, that's going to be, because if I'm reading this correctly, it says that this applies to all single and two-family residents. However, single-family and two-family lots platted after 2007 are subject to heritage tree protection provisions, which shall apply to the developer, home builder, and homeowner. Remind me again, does this tree removal permit for a non-heritage tree apply to homeowners? If I'm a homeowner, do I have to get a permit to remove my 12-inch tree?
So let me go back to that
This is under
particular,
that 3.23.020B.
and yes.
Yeah. PJ, while Andrea's looking for that language, in short, no. Residential lots are only required to get a permit to remove anything that's a heritage tree. So that is probably just something we need to make more clear in the red lines. We changed the name because we were trying to simplify the process to remove protected trees in the right of way. And so we made this permit encompassing for that, but that's probably just something that we need to clean up and make sure is clear in section 3.
Yeah, because I'm reading this again. I don't know why, maybe it's just my simple brain here, but it says under item B, the provisions of this section apply to all developments subject to this code except as noted. Then it says single family and two family approved after 2007 are exempt. So lots approved and platted prior to 2007 are exempt from requirement of a tree removal permit. However, single family and two family lots platted after 2007 are subject to the heritage tree protection provisions. So you're trying to say that they're not subject to protected tree, but they are to heritage tree.
So PJ, let me back up a little bit. So under our current code, what the current language says right now is that all residential properties that were platted prior to 2007 are not subject to the tree preservation regulations at all. So any residential subdivision that came in and that it was because the city adopted its tree preservation ordinance in 2007. So any subdivision, any residential subdivision that was platted prior to that date are completely exempt from our entire tree preservation ordinance, and they're not subject to it at all. They can remove any trees that they want. They can be able to, yes. For residential subdivisions that came in after 2007, they are subject to the tree preservation requirements and regulations, but that it only applies is at the time of your subdivision platting process. So when a developer comes in that they're laying out a subdivision and they're identifying all the trees, they're identifying the trees that they need to be removed at that time as part of that subdivision construction planning process. Yes, that is something that they would be subject to it and inclusive up to the homeowner. It was recent, and I'm glad we're having this conversation because like Ethan mentioned, it's probably something that you need to clarify and clean up is that recent state legislation that got passed now prohibits us from being able to tell homeowners that they cannot remove certain tree species from their property. And so that is a change in state law that was recent done that we're just not able to do that anymore.
Yeah, and that's why I pricked my ears up on this, what you just said, because even though we love our heritage trees, and even though the heritage tree ordinance applies to homeowners specifically after 2007, what you just said was state law prohibits that.
Right.
So that's going to be a conflict right there.
Yeah, so it's something that I think that the homeowner is going to be the cleanup that we're going to have to do. And it may be something where we either just remove it altogether or we only identify that, we mimic the state law requirements so that it matches exactly.
Yeah, because regardless of this, my comment to myself was, this is going to be good luck enforcing this, I guess is what I'm saying. I mean, if someone's going to cut down a tree in their backyard and they've got a 2-acre tract and no one's going to hear it or see it, basically, how do you enforce that? I mean, it just seems like one of those, you could put an ad in the paper one time and tell them here's the new ordinance, but one person out of 90,000 people is going to read that. And that's just, it's going to it's gonna be a shock to a lot of people to hear that they can't cut the tree down in the backyard. And I know it applies to heritage only, but they're not gonna hear that. They're gonna say, that city can't tell me that I can't cut a tree down, you know, you're gonna hear it. So anyway, that was it. Just, but there is a conflict there. So yes, obviously you all know about it now, so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate you bringing it up because it gives us the opportunity to be able to clean that up.
All right, I'm sorry, Ethan, go ahead.
You're good. So yeah, over the past month, we opened our public comment window. We created our website at udc.georgetown.org, which provided summaries of all the high points, the things that were a bit more substantial, of a change. But you could still also view all the detailed information and the record of our discussion as we talked through each of these amendments. And we remember Andrea and I tracking that on the screen during our meetings. That was also available online. So that was available online with an online survey that we could receive comments from. That information for that website and that link was also emailed out on a regular mailing list to everybody who essentially has submitted an application with us within recent memory. And then we held 5 office hours sessions where we were available to meet with people one-on-one to be able to answer their questions or go over any materials they would like. So we did have 2 in-person meetings and receive quite a number of feedback items on different things. One item that we heard was just that, hey, it is cheaper for me to pay the fee than it is to buy a tree and pay somebody to plant it. And so we were encouraged to raise the mitigation fee to address that concern and encourage people to replant on site. Because right now your tree mitigation fee is less burdensome than actually planting a new tree. We were also received a few recommendations about revising our preferred, prohibited, and recommended plant list. In several places in our ordinance, we reference low water use plants or plants that do well in tight areas, around parking or land, other hardscape features. And so that was one recommendation, just a request to update our plant list. We received some feedback on the turf, our terms for turf. This was from a landscape architect who has done a lot of work with turf, especially with schools and daycares and other kind of K through 12 users. And so we took her feedback into account. I'll show you on the next slide. And then from the same landscape architect, we heard that, of course, tree preservation requirements can be burdensome and cause issues for large industrial sites where you're working with 500,000 square foot, million square foot buildings, like we see up in the north part of I-35 through Georgetown. Just because they have such a large footprint, require so much parking, pavement for trucks and vehicles, not a whole lot of room to work around trees. We did also receive support for that 3rd class of protected trees that we put in there when we portion out those larger protected trees from the smaller protected trees and adjust the fees. That's actually helpful to developers, we heard. So that was encouraging. And then we also just had a lot of people asking for clarification on some of the stuff we were proposing, who were satisfied after we were able to explain. I mentioned the landscape architect who gave us some feedback on artificial turf. And her concern was primarily with educational facilities and sports fields not being subject to the same screening requirements. If you have playing fields, practice fields at the high school or a middle school, or if you have artificial turf around a playground at a daycare facility, oftentimes screening can be detrimental to the use of that facility. In childcare, visibility is the name of the game for child abuse prevention. And so we have just revised our terms for synthetic turf to piece those uses out from the screening requirements. Are there any questions about that?
Yeah, I have a comment on the artificial turf. Again, back to the draft document on page 33 of 38 under section 3, talking about synthetic or artificial lawns. I remember, and it's probably me that brought it up, but I didn't see anywhere in here where it talks about not having synthetic lawns in PUE or other utility easements. Did that get eliminated for a reason, or is that something overlooked? Or
No, PJ, you are correct. I think it was something that it was. No, you are correct. Because that was, I do remember that discussion, and that was part of that direction. So we'll make sure that we go ahead and add that in here as well as another.
and then
Letter.
this is more of a question or just a general question. I'm not sure. Y'all were very specific under item D. It says synthetic or artificial lawn should be made of polyethylene or polypropylene. It says shall be made. That's pretty emphatic. So residential properties may use a nylon material. So do y'all really want to get super specific on the type of material that is used? I mean, it's kind of limiting in the fact, and I'm always looking to the future. If they come up with some new plastic polymer that is a better deal and looks better and it's more realistic, do we really want to have to go back and change the rules again and say you can use this one too? So what's your thought on that?
I'll go ahead and chime in.
Go ahead,
PJ, part of the reasoning behind the polyethylene and polypropylene used for commercial products was that the heat retention and the ability to clean it is much greater. It cleans off easier. It doesn't maintain any kind of bacteria. It also doesn't retain the heat as much. Therefore, you're not creating a hotter surface than necessary. We could always add, I think you're right. We could always add in something that just really says something better than nylon, or giving that ability to where if something new comes out, that's still an option.
Or new products that provide the same or better
right
heat retention, or whatever word you want to call it, and or perviousness, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it gives you wiggle room in the future when someone comes out with a new material.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
No, that's good. This is good, PJ.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, continue.
All right, so purpose of our meeting tonight is for y'all to be able to consider making a recommendation on the proposed amendments to the P&Z and the City Council. And so we are, of course, here for questions or to help you talk through what's next.
Okay, so go ahead.
What I was just gonna say, if I may add on to this, is that based on the what we heard from City Council yesterday, and because of the feedback that we did receive on the tree preservation items, one of the things that when we do go back to them that we're going to be asking for additional clarification is that in their direction to us to look at these specific items, it's the question about is this something that we want to go ahead and incorporate with these amendments right now, or if it's something that do we take action on these amendments but then immediately come back with the ones that they specifically asked us to look into. And so right now, as far as for options, as you the committee consider this item, you really have the option for us to be able to either make a recommendation on the red lines that we have right now and that we discussed and presented to you, which so far, like Ethan mentioned earlier, no changes are being proposed to those specific red lines, aside from what PJ just brought up today, that those are some cleanup items that we need to make sure that we incorporate in there. So you have the option of making a recommendation to move those red lines forwards as amended or as revised as we discussed today. Or alternatively, you also have the option to be able to take action where we continue and we postpone taking any sort of action on this particular item to the next meeting. This is also, because this is the item that was posted for action, we do have a required public hearing today. So procedure wise, we can go ahead and open and close the public hearing. Or as mentioned, if we decide to postpone this item to the next meeting, we can continue both the public hearing and the action on this particular item to the next meeting in March, or, when we can come back to you after we've had a chance to finish the discussion with the city council meeting and then be able to modify as needed, presenting on that. So just wanted to add on to that and make you aware that those are two options that you have for taking action today.
All right, so let's go ahead and open up the public hearing then, so that we can discuss this. And so I hear this, therefore, I guess officially, let's open the public hearing for possible action on the proposed text amendment to the UDC relating tree preservation landscaping ordinance standards, specifically as it pertains to tree preservation, removal, mitigation, street yard, gateway, parking, landscape standards, and screening and water conservation requirements. So
we don't have any, we have no speakers. Nobody has signed up on this particular item.
Can I make comments, or am I not part of that group?
Well, you can make comments as part of the deliberation of the committee. So it's, we've opened the public hearing. There are no speakers. You can go ahead and close the public hearing. And then the procedure then would be for somebody to make a motion, have a second, and then we go into deliberation.
Okay, so, all right, well, since there are nobody signed up to speak, I will close the public hearing. So I do have a comment though. You said there's two options on the table that you mentioned. So is everybody clear on the committee of what those two options are? Can I just rephrase what those options are? Okay, before we have a motion. So the options are basically, we go ahead and vote on a portion of what was discussed, well, all of what was discussed in the city's workshop, and we can have a vote up or down on what we know that they've discussed, and then I guess bring up the rest of that, right, Adriana? At the next meeting, we could, after they have that, we would vote on the remainder of that portion. This is all option number one, by the way. So we vote on what's been talked about at the council workshop yesterday, and whatever didn't get discussed at that, we can vote on that next week or next meeting.
So in a way, yes. I mean, you have the option to essentially recommend approval of the, so we have the option where you can say, we recommend approval of the red lines as, with the modification that was discussed at the meeting today. That would include all the red lines for everything that was attached to your Novus item. So from the tree preservation to the street yards to the water conservation portion. You can also make a motion just we recommend approval of just the red lines specifically as they relate to the tree preservation area with the modification that we discussed today. And then, you're basically recommending to not move forward with the remainder of the red lines. And we can certainly bring those, because you can say we will postpone action on the remainder of the red lines to the future meeting. So you can include that as part of your motion. Or you can essentially take a motion where you postpone action on all of the red lines so that you can just take one vote on everything together as opposed to piecemealing it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does to me. Is everybody on board with that? Brian, Tracy? Jen?
Yes, I'm good with that. Yes.
Those are basically the two options we're dealt with. So I know I have my personal opinion on that. I guess what we need to do first, though, is entertain a motion from somebody. And I can make the motion, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm going to make a motion. We can discuss this, but I'm going to make a motion that we postpone the any action on today's items until after the city council has their workshop and we know what the full breadth of their comments are regarding all this.
I second, Brian.
Okay, we have a second from Brian, and that means that we are now open for discussion. If y'all don't have any, I mean, that's just my feelings, that we ought to wait until we know what all of their comments are so we can just handle this in one thing. And I talked to Andreana earlier, and this isn't going to put any major kinks in the system if we do it this way. So that would be my only hesitation. I don't want to hold stuff up and everything now gets backed up, 6 months because we're waiting one more month to get this done. So I'm going on your, go ahead, Jen.
PJ, I just wanted to put my 2 cents in here. And I just wanted to say I'm on the same page with you. I agree with you. And I think it is good that we wait and hear their comments just in case there's something they don't agree with. And then that does give us an option to change things. So I'm on board with it. And yes, I would vote yes on that.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? All right, well, hearing none, then I guess we'll take a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, it's unanimous. All right, well, we'll take it up next month. What else?
And that's it. That was the last item that we had on the agenda.
All right, well, good. Well, that's a nice short meeting. Again, thank you for all of your time and all the hard work. I know you guys put a lot of work into this stuff. This is not easy, and I appreciate that. So I want you to know that we appreciate it. And that's why I actually tried to read all this stuff, because I know you don't expect everybody's going to read this stuff. So
No, well, we appreciate you. I mean, this is a team effort. That's why we told you from the beginning that we were going to put you to work, and you guys have done, you worked on it as well, just as hard as we have on this. So we appreciate all the effort and your feedback and patience and just being there with us as we get this through. We're not done yet, but we're almost there. We're almost at the finish line.
all right, we're getting close. Well, thanks again, and y'all have a great week. We'll call the meeting to a close. It's 4:07.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Bye.
All right.